the world's capital for pubs. I am coming to you from London, from the Three Falcons pub, which is such a beautiful space, and thank you Zoravar for hosting us. And I have with me a bunch of extremely talented, very diverse set of people, and it's a shame that 4 out of the 7 that we are journalists. I mean, why do we just land up everywhere, especially if it's a pub?
You can't get rid of us.
Just can't get rid of journalists. But let's talk about the rise in gastro pubs in the city of London. Now, why am I talking about gastro pubs? Pubs in London have been in the UK have been dying, and the reason for that is, although this is the pub capital of the world, before COVID, before the economic crisis, even before the 2000s, I think in the millennium, just before we turned the millennium in the 1980s, there were close to some 60,000 something pubs, of which today, if you took a census, there are less than 45,000 pubs in the UK. And many of them, of course, in London, because London is such a great place to meet. For many who don't know, pubs is actually a short form for public house. And it's not just an act of going and sitting and meeting a friend. It's almost an emotion. Like many in India would say, biryani is an emotion. Is that what it is for you? What's a pub? What does it mean for you to go to a pub?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the greatest British cultural institution, and something that's uniquely British. Like any friends I have coming from other parts of the world, always the first thing I do is bring them to a pub, because there's incredible history there, and you go back to something like the First World War, when people couldn't afford to heat their homes, and so they went to the pub because there was a fire on, and there was a conversation and warmth and beer. And and I think it is something that's uniquely English, and is like a fantastic British institution that connects you with generations of the past.
Yeah, sure. And free heating, so why not? Going to a pub meant getting a drink for many years. Is that the same now? Who wants to go?
Okay. I don't think so, not anymore. I think firstly, people don't drink as much as they used to anymore. I'm not.
Is that a good thing?
I think so, probably. Drinking's great, and I love beer, but you've got to try and stay healthy. I also think that for some communities that have come into the UK, obviously you can tell I'm from a South Asian community. Food is really important as well, and actually the pubs, while they're they're a centerpiece of a community, and while they're very traditional and English, they've always got to represent the community that they live in and that they serve. And as different people have come in from different parts of the world, then food within pubs has become important as well. Yeah. And you can't. People don't go out and drink 10 pints on a Tuesday, but people have meals and have birthdays to celebrate on a Wednesday night and want to go into nice places and celebrate them.
Mm-hmm. So it's a place now to eat and to drink.
Yeah.
Would you bring your family to a pub?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Yes. Okay, here's the question for the man who's hosting us. Zoravar, you're so young, you've got great ambition. You're in a place like London. You could have easily had a fine dining in an Oxford Street, etc. Why did you go for a gastropub and in a location such as this one?
So the idea behind it was people in London love pubs. Everyone knows that in the UK. But they were dying because they were not run properly, or they were not hygienic, they didn't have good food. So my idea was to turn that around, but with an Indian twist. So the food we do here is from Delhi, so it's very different to the kind of food you get in pubs.
Okay, and I'm going to tell our viewers how different this is. This is actually almost a tribute to Delhi. This says Old Delhi Times, that's the title of the menu. The starters go something like mirchi vada, Jodhpuri mirchi vada, bhel puri. Now in a pub, right, you have these for snacks. Punjabi samosa chaat, papdi chaat, so many lovely things. Now chaat again was such a novice thing to do in a place like London. And then you have things like mint coriander chutney replacing mayonnaise, tamarind chutney maybe replacing ketchup, No, wait, ketchup can't be replaced. Maybe as an add-on. Lots of vegetarian options, and for mains you have things like Old Delhi butter chicken, shahi paneer, kadai chicken, desi murg tari. Have I got you guys hungry? Chicken chettinad, Kashmiri rogan gosh. Where are the vegetarian options? What do I eat? There are.
The kadai paneer.
Ah, paneer.
Then we have this
The soya, the vegan. Of course. Chef Akash would point me to those. He's designed the food for this pub. And here, this is something that really caught my eye. Mishti doi for a dessert option. Kulfi, pistachio. I heard someone saying.
He's not the only one.
He's not the only one. Okay. Now, tell me about the brainchild of putting together this menu. What were you thinking?
So pretty much it's self-explanatory. Like the old Delhi times, we were going for like proper hardcore Indian food where we wanted to bring a plate of India into London and England. So let it being a pub, which is like very British thing, and you put Indian in a pub. So that's Indian food in the pub. So we wanted to bring Delhi, where I'm from as well, and the Zora's from, and we wanted to bring as much as Delhi into this. So we just put I went to a couple of months. I went to India as well to see how everything is in Delhi. Just bring.
Where all did you go? What did you do in Delhi for the 2 months?
So we went to one of the restaurants I worked with, Walk in the Clouds. Saw a few things there, and then just roaming around Delhi. It's just seeing everything from Delhi.
Yeah.
It's just like bustling, just bursting with flavors. Every corner you go of Delhi, you have like Sufyani Murugangara tikka, or like even tandoori baby chicken. It's just you see it and you want that.
Yeah.
So pretty much all of it is from like hardcore India. My travels around the world as well. Some of it is just you sit down and you're just like, okay, yeah, that would sound really good and that would taste really good.
So is it doing very well? Do people love it? Are you still exploring? Has it been 2 years since you started?
Yes, it has. And it is growing, but being modest, I think people do love it.
Yeah. Okay. For a long time, not until very recent years, pubs were meant for men, and they would go and have a drink. I see you raising your eyebrows with absolute disagreement.
It should have been for women as well, but the women were at home, of course, looking after the kids because children were not allowed in pubs.
Yes.
Good old days.
No, it isn't. So now women do go to pubs, and I go with my friends. We celebrate birthdays in pubs. We have evenings in pubs without our partners because it's much better. And yes, it's safe as well. We find that it's very safe, and it's a very nice place to meet and to get together.
Mm-hmm. What then explains this irony of pubs being so loved by so many, and especially now you have so much inclusivity. For example, I'm a teetotaler, but I've never in the city of London felt like a pub is not a place for me. There are always zero alcohol options or great mocktails. It's a great place to drink, even if someone doesn't want to drink any alcohol. I don't eat any meat, but I've never again felt unwelcome in a pub. There are so many vegetarian options, as Chef Akash pointed out. So what explains this love on one hand, but the decline of pubs in pub capital, UK?
I think people's tastes have changed. I mean, people want more food, more good food when they go to a pub. I know a good friend of ours who's from outside of London.
Talk of good food.
I just have to say the words and it arrives. So, wonderful.
Thank you for wishing it for us.
But a very good friend of ours, actually, who is from a small village outside of London in Bucks, he opened a pub about 15 years ago, and I remember him. I was a bit surprised actually that he was getting involved in this because he's actually what we call a gentleman farmer. But the village had no pub. It had died, and he wanted to do something about that, and he felt very attached to the village, and he was telling us about how they were going to open a pub, but I always remember him saying that it was not going to work without food. and they weren't even going to think about opening a pub without food. So when it came to...
Were you saying that from a customer point of view?
If
you were to go, would you?
I had never really thought about pubs and food that much, but I was struck by he'd made a connection between the importance of a pub with food, and as far as he was concerned, the project wasn't going to work, even in a village pub. They needed to have food.
Yeah.
So getting the chef and arranging menus and all everything to do with having a pub with food, the food element was a really important part of planning to get the pub up and running.
Yeah.
And it's, from what I know, it's been a success. I mean, I've been there and we've eaten there, and it's very successful. And it's full of families, especially at the weekend eating, and having the odd drink as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it's still running.
It's thriving, and it
Yeah,
seems
it's
to be as much a restaurant as a pub.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
But it's good food. It's not the food that you found back in the 70s where you had a packet of crisps or you had
Yeah.
something that you just stuck in the oven,
Yeah.
which was not freshly prepared.
Yes.
Now they have to, offer some high-end sort of fare, and with the nice relaxed atmosphere of a pub. That's what people are looking for.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about the 70s, 80s. What's your first memory of a pub?
Well, I come from Belgium, and when I came to this country in the 70s, I remember the English family I was staying with taking me to a pub, and I didn't really know what to expect. And we got in there. First of all, you had to be with an adult. You couldn't enter a pub, even to go to the toilet on your own. This has changed a bit now. But anyway, the food that was pretty much non-existent. You had crisps, and they even gave you slices of bread with butter, and then crisps that they sort of stuck on top of the slice of bread. And I thought, oh, this is very different from what I'm used to. I mean, the food was really not
What were
nice.
you used to? What was Belgium pub like?
Well, we don't really have pubs. I mean, we have bars and we have restaurants, but the idea of a pub, like you have, the concept of a pub, like in England, doesn't exist in Belgium. And then you could see that things evolved, through, time. And I think also there was a time in this country where the sort of business rates went up.
Yes.
And then also the tax on beer went up, and
I'm going to talk to you
therefore
about that.
just selling drinks and no food was just
Unacceptable.
not unacceptable
Sure.
anymore, because publicans couldn't. I mean, the pub owner couldn't actually run the place
Sustain.
anymore. It wasn't sustainable.
Of course. And I completely hear you when you say you took offense coming from Belgium if you gave her something in the name of chips or fries,
I mean,
which
it
are
is
not good.
crisps. It's not even chips.
I know. Okay, about the stress of taxes and the real reason why pubs were dying. Tell us about that.
So the real reason pubs were dying was, of course, people were coming in and just buying a pint of beer or a soda in line, and staying for a few hours and leaving, because the reason could be food, could be just the way they ran it. But
So it was not a sustainable model.
Yeah, it was not.
You were paying for free heating, free electricity,
Yeah.
and so on, but you were not making enough.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think the introduction of Gastro Pubs really changed the whole dynamic of the pub industry. And now there's a lot of competition as well. There are people doing Thai food in pubs. There are people doing Japanese. So, and Indian, of course. So I think it's growing. It's a growing market.
Earlier, when you would cross a pub, you would smell a lot of beer. But now you smell, literally when Tim and I were walking by to come here, we literally could smell good food, and we were like, that's exactly the expression, and we were like, okay, we need to go. And then it turns out, luckily, to be Three Falcons. I'm going to take a short break on this conversation we're having of the spike in the number of gastro pubs, even at a time when pubs are generally dying in the UK. But there's a very interesting question I'm going to ask you guys on the other side of the break, which is, have you ever thought about why so many pubs are always named after an animal or a bird? It's always a king's head, a falcon, a lion, 3 lions, red lion, something. Have you thought about that? And why a Bengal tiger doesn't feature, by the way, in the name of the pub? Anyway, we'll do that just after this short break. We are coming to you from a pub in central London, Three Falcons pub, run by Zoravar, and we're discussing the rise of gastro pubs, even as pubs are generally known to be dying in the United Kingdom. But when you're inside a good pub, you realize it's such a comforting feeling, and I think both of you said that. But let's start with this trend of gastro pubs. Do you know? Of course you do. When was the first gastropub opened?
The first gastropub opened in 1991 near Farringdon, and it's called the Eagle. And apparently, there was a man who wanted to open a restaurant and realized that actually it was very, very expensive. And he knew a chef and decided then to set up a gastropub, so to have a pub and inside the pub to offer high-end food to the customers, and it took off, and from then on a few other gastropubs were created around London, and I think also around the country, and it's become very, very popular because, as we said, the emphasis now is on food. People like to go out and eat, but eat good food, not the food that we had back in even the 80s, where a lot of pubs would just get food and put it in the microwave and heat it up and then serve it on your plate.
Yeah.
But it wasn't freshly cooked, and it wasn't good quality food.
It wasn't real food at all. Is it a fair summary to say in a pub, especially in a gastropub, when you don't find Indian food or Asian food, you could take offense?
Quite a question that. Normally, if they're serving kind of traditional English food, they might have fish and chips on the menu, and then almost everything else will be either pie or there'll be steaks as well. Steaks if it's a kind of a fancy place. Sausage and mash. Yeah, sausage and mash and pies. A lot of that. I personally think it's a lot. You know, it has. I eat it occasionally, but it's quite highly processed. There isn't a lot of art in terms of putting it together. Like you look at the chef, you can talk about spending time in India and being inspired, and you can.
It's a really fine food.
Taste. Yeah.
Thanks for pointing that out. I just bit into the broccoli kebab. I don't know what that. Malai broccoli. It is so delicious. It's so delicious. Oops. Where do we start from? Thanks for pointing out the fine food. I just bit into the broccoli malai kebab. It is so delicious, and even as a vegetarian, again, reiterating as a teetotaler, I feel pubs generally in London have become so inclusive. You said the first gastropub was called Eagle.
The Eagle.
So my question is, why is a pub always named either a bird or a falcon, an eagle or a lion or a titan? Well, not tiger though, but something to do with the royal family. Thoughts, questions? If you had a pub, what would you call it in the UK?
I'd name it after my beloved.
Okay. A pub which is called Catherine.
No,
Exciting?
it would have to be Catherine's Arms.
Or Catherine's Heart.
Because I think if I called it Catherine's Head, that would possibly have negative connotations. So I'll stick with Catherine's Arms.
Okay. What would you? Okay. Well, you've already called it Three Falcons, and why?
So my father actually named it, and his favorite bird is the falcon. So that's why.
Fantastic. May you rise and rise like falcon. What would you call Mark?
I would like my pub to be known for sport and food. So if I can somehow bring them together, so maybe like the Cricketer's Loaf or something like that. Maybe.
Cricketer's Loaf. Fantastic. Well, you wait for your turn. It's me next. I'd probably say, curry sounds less. I like cricket. I like the connection of cricket that's made. I might call it Cricket Wicket. or something like
Cricket
that. Sorry,
wicket.
pass.
I like-
Let me pass it to him.
I like the historic names. I've got my local is called the Old Nun's Head because apparently Henry VIII decapitated a nun on the site.
Yes.
And there's one across the road called the Pyrotechnist. So something that evokes a bit of that strange,
Yeah.
archaic history.
Yeah.
What would I go for? I don't know. I like the Jolly Butcher.
Okay.
I
If you
mean,
had your own pub.
it's a tough one, you know. Just gone blank. Normally, I have so many things.
Go
to say.
blank pub.
That's what happens when you leave the pub. After a heavy night, actually.
What about you? Did you get a chance?
No, I didn't get a chance.
Yeah,
What
what-
shall I?
What are you going to call your pub?
The Exotic Traveller. Why not?
Yes, for travel stories
Yes, and exotic food. And yes,
and the exotic feeling of being with a friend or
being
partner or
together
family.
and sharing.
That's it.
Tales and.
That's it. On that great note, should be. Oh, I had one last question. This lovely connection between curry and cricket. One of these podcasters has to go. Curry, cricket, culture, London.
Oh, well, cricket is so linked to the South Asian demographic, right? And curry is so central to that experience. Whenever you go to a ground in India or Sri Lanka or Pakistan, you get served wonderful lunch. Someone comes around and says, do you want a thali? Absolutely, I want a thali. And so, those things just seem very closely connected. And with this pub being so close to Lord's, I think it's kind of a natural place where cricket fans flock after a day's play. We've talked a lot about how pubs have changed from like when we were growing up. They were very smoky, packet of crisps, beer stained places. Now there's a lot more gastro pubs, but I think there are a lot of places where you still find food to be overpriced and underseasoned and not necessarily like brimming with love, which is exactly what you get here from Akash and Zora. It's like really flavorful, authentic food that's
is.
just
I
packed full of love and passion, and that's a really nice thing.
and talent and experience of your travels within Delhi. So thank you very much for bringing to us authenticity on a plate. And I've just made up my mind. If I had a pub in central London, close to Lord's, I might call it the Crown of Cricket or something like that. So keep it associated with the royal family, but also have a cricket connection, because there is no such thing as lovely as watching an amazing game of cricket, football for the football lovers, with a bunch of friends, family, eating good food and saying yay when your team wins. Agree?
Yeah.
Yay! Thank you very much. Drop in your comments. Take care. Goodbye.